So our first topic for today is what is the problem with traditional onboarding and why is traditional onboarding so expensive and so and not productive and not what we want it to be. But first, we need to define what is traditional onboarding. And for the last 6 months, I've spoken to definitely over 50, I might even say over 100 companies about their onboarding. And usually these are companies from 10, 15 employees. So just basically just getting started all the way to 500, 600 employees. So that's kind of the range of companies that I usually talk to. And the onboarding processes in these companies is surprisingly the same. It's almost always the same type of onboarding. And these are some of the elements that we always see in these onboardings. The first part is there's an orientation element that's done by the HR department. So it's usually either from a 1 to 2 hour session all the way to 1 to 2 days of time spent by someone from the HR team sitting with the new hire and doing quote unquote onboarding or orientation. Usually they talk about the company mission, vision, different policies that are important, a little bit about the culture, maybe some benefits that they have. They answer frequently asked questions and so forth and so forth. This is the orientation section that usually sits with HR and someone from the HR team is responsible for it. The second step is what we call job-specific onboarding, where we try to get the new hire to perform in their job. And this part usually sits with the manager or the local team where the new hire is employed. So either the manager or maybe a buddy or someone from the team helps the new hire become productive in their role. So they show them the tools, they show them the tasks that they need to do, they tell them about their goals, maybe they provide some specific training just to help them be more productive. And what we usually see with job specific onboarding is that it's very up and down, give and go. It really depends on the hiring manager and the structure and process that the manager has in their team, which then creates a lack of consistency across the organization because some managers have a well-defined onboarding process for their department and for their team, while others don't. So really depends when you're onboarding into a certain company, it really depends what manager you got handed to, the quality of experience you're going to get as a new hire joining that company. So that's usually step number 2 is job specific. That happens with the manager, and that's usually hit and miss. Third one is that all of these companies, they share some materials. Most of the times it's either the decks that were used in the live sessions, maybe some PDFs, or ideally even a link or something that they can just read through and get a little bit more info. And an optional fourth element that we see in some of these organizations is there is a buddy system. There's someone from the team who acts as a buddy and who helps the new hire get on board. In most cases where we see a buddy system, it's just the manager delegating their part of the work to the buddy. So then instead of the manager doing the job-specific onboarding, they usually find a buddy, someone from the team who then does that part. Maybe this looks like your onboarding as well. I'm really curious if this reminds you of your onboarding in your company. Let us know in the chat if this what your onboarding looks like. But some of the tools that we see with the traditional onboarding is a lot of face-to-face sessions, whether that's physically in a room together if we're working in the office or remote virtual sessions. So a lot of time spent with the new hire on orientation and job-specific onboarding. We see a lot of use of checklists and different to-do lists where the goal is to check items off the list. And once all of the items of the list are checked, then we're considered the onboarding successful. And then we see a lot of PDFs and like offline resources, decks, and that type of thing, which usually nobody reads. That's what they tell me, that they share the decks with the new hires, but they don't really think anybody actually reads them. So if this sounds and looks like your onboarding, let us know in the chat. I'm really curious what your onboarding looks like. But what are some of the challenges that this traditional onboarding really presents, and why is it so expensive? The first one is that traditional onboarding isn't really scalable. If we're relying on face-to-face interactions and spending time with every new hire, there's a natural limit to how many people we can onboard by doing that, right? So as the company starts to scale and as we're hiring more and more people and onboarding more and more people, there's a limit to how much time we can spend per employee in order to onboard them. Which means that if we're depending on live sessions for the orientation part and the job-specific onboarding, as we scale, it becomes impossible. So we have to reduce the quality of the onboarding to provide less time, or in some cases, hire more people to get help so that we can deliver the onboarding in the traditional way, which is face-to-face, and we spend time with every new hire. The second issue that we've kind of hinted towards already is that it's not standardized, meaning that if it's all based on interactions one-on-one between the manager and the new hire, buddy and new hire, HR and new hire, it really depends on how those people are feeling at the moment, how much time they have at the moment. Are they even in the office? Maybe they're on sick leave, maybe they are on vacation, like who knows? So it really depends on the situation when the new hire starts of what type of onboarding experience they're going to get. And very often than not, we see that in the same organization, different departments have a different quality of onboarding experience. So it's not really standardized. And from an HR perspective, it's really hard to create a standardized onboarding experience where a lot of it depends just on what the line manager does and what the buddy does. And then the third reason that we see, and the third challenge that we see with traditional onboarding, is that it's not really how people learn. And this is the thing, it's not engaging. So when we push people in their first week into countless sessions, session after session with HR, with the manager, and then we give them some resources to read, it turns out that it's not really how people learn. And it's really hard to onboard someone when we're not using proper learning methodologies and learning techniques that will help them really absorb the things that are happening in those sessions, right? So just bombarding people with information in face-to-face sessions and then expecting that they will internalize all of it, that they will build skills, that they will understand everything that we've said, and it's all happening in the first week, which is usually very emotional and very sensitive because they're still new, they're trying to figure things out, and we're just bombarding them with information. So most new hires would even say that the onboarding that at their company is not really engaging and it's not really enjoyable because that's not how people like to learn. Now, if this sounds like your onboarding and if these are some of the challenges that you're facing, then today I want us to start looking at a different page and flipping a page and thinking of a different way in which we can onboard new hires where we're actually solving for all of these challenges. And I want us to go from the traditional onboarding towards something that I like to call blended onboarding. Now, on the left here on your screen, you'll see what a traditional onboarding looks like. It's usually vertical, where things happen in sequence, one after another. It's kind of a checklist. Once you do one of the things, you check it from the list, and when the whole list is checked, you're onboarded. And then, as we said, most of the items of the list, or even all of the items on your list, are just live sessions with HR, with the manager, and with the buddy. And then you just have a sequence of live sessions and or meetings. And then once you've had all the meetings, you're considered onboarded. Reality is that the results of this type of onboarding and the impact isn't really where we want it to be, which is why I want to propose this idea of blended onboarding, where we look at all of these live sessions, which, by the way, are very repetitive. Like if you ask an HR person what they do in an orientation session, they'll tell you that they do the same thing every time. And I'm pretty sure that if you're the person hosting the orientation sessions at your company, you're aware that you're saying the same thing every time. You're clicking the same slides and you're telling the same stories over and over and over again. Same things goes for job specific onboarding. Whenever we onboard a new person to a role, we're basically telling them the same thing we told the person before they came into that role. So it's very repetitive and time consuming in a way. And what I want to propose is that instead of thinking of our live sessions as our only methodology, we want to start thinking about self-paced onboarding, where we're taking all of that content that we usually just repeat and all of those decks and materials and the value that we give in those live sessions, and we repackage it in a different format that's going to be more suitable for a new hire that's starting. We're going to give them a self-paced journey that they can take at their own pace, at their own time, and get more value from that content because it's pre-made for them. It's prepared and they already have it ready when they get there on day one. But we're not going to do the whole thing just in self-paced. We still have live sessions that are plugged in as we go to make sure that we have the interaction, that we have the face-to-face checkpoints, that we answer questions, that we build a relationship with the new hire. So we're still doing all of those things. We're just lowering the importance of live sessions. We're removing some of those, turning them into self-paced content, and leaving just a portion of those live meetings. And then if you look at here, left and right picture, left picture is very time heavy, which in business terms means expensive because we're spending a lot of hours. But now we're spending the hours once. We're building a self-paced journey that then the employee can take in their own time, and we plug in just a little bit of our time for every new hire. So basically we can go from all live sessions to maybe 30% live sessions with the person and 70% automated, pre-made content that's going to be ready for them and that they can use whenever they're ready. And some of the benefits of this is that obviously it's less time investment. So it also scales with your company, because even if you onboard a lot of people, you have the self-paced solution that's ready that you can just give to all of your new hires. Whether you have 2 in a month or 10 in a month, you can all give them this self-paced program that's ready for them. They can just start from day one. So a lot less time investment and a lot more scalable. The second one is that now we get a standardized process, because if we have a self-paced pre-made onboarding that we give to every new hire, we know that they're all going through the same quality of experience and that they're all going to get the same package, give or take, with maybe slight variations, but the essence of it is going to be the same for everyone. So now we can start talking about a standardized onboarding experience across the company and not just in specific departments, specific teams. And the last one, as we've said, this is way more natural and way more engaging for the new hire when they have variation between self-paced study, where I can go through the program at my own time and have maybe different activities, which we'll talk about a bit later. And at the same time, I'm also meeting people from the organization. I'm getting the chance to ask questions. I'm having live interactions, but I'm not just in live interactions. I have this time for peace and quiet, for my own reflection, for my own learning, and to immerse myself into the new role and the new company at my own pace, and how I feel about it. So this results in a much more engaging journey, and we see new hires who are much happier with the process, because we're not just pushing live sessions on them, but we're kind of balancing. We're giving them 70% self-paced, and then maybe about 30% of it in live sessions. Now, this opens a new topic where, okay, let's say that we believe in this and we want to have the self-paced onboarding. The question becomes is, how do we centralize this process? Usually the most common question that I get is, where does this self-onboarding sit? Do we need a software? Do we need a tool? Like, how do we structure this self-paced onboarding, and what do we put inside of it? Which is what we're going to cover in the second part of